Oh, thank you. That is so warm and friendly. I'm Ricky Camilleri. I am hosting Build right now. Judah Friedlander has been a comedy favorite since his days on one of the best TV comedies of all time, 30 Rock. Since then, he's been killing it in stand-up literally every night in New York City. He tours as well, but I swear to you, he performs every night in New York City. His new Netflix special, America is the Greatest Country in the United States, is a very sarcastic take on how America is better at being worse than everyone else. Before we get started, I want to remind viewers they can submit a question using the button next to this video. For now, let's take a look at a clip from America is the Greatest Country in the United States.
Where are you from?
England.
England, at one point in history, you used to own the whole world. What happened? And I don't think you were an evil imperialistic nation. I think you were simply a country that was in search of better tasting cuisine. I think one day your troops wandered over to India, took a lunch break, and were like, wow, this curry is just dandy. Let's take this recipe back to the Queen. And then your general stepped in and said, no, this is too good. We should surround this nation with our troops and protect this chicken tikka masala recipe. Make sure it stays authentic. England, you used to own us. Yeah, you did. You used to own us. And then we defeated you. Took your language and perfected it. You got nothing left. Your last piece of dignity, David Beckham, he lives here. He named his son Brooklyn. It's over.
Everybody, please welcome Judah Friedlander.
Thanks. Thanks so much. Great to be here on Build.
Thanks so much for being here.
We're building so many things.
We are building a lot of things.
We're building the future while recognizing the past and the present.
It's making it all great, right?
Yeah.
It's about. Congrats on the special. What number special is this for you?
One. It's my first one.
This is your first special?
Yeah. Well, you know, I've turned them down over the years for.
Have you really?
Yeah, for legal reasons, and then there were.
Legal
you know,
reasons?
well, yeah, they have, usually when they give you these, if they offer you a special, it's like they don't own just that, whatever company it is, they don't own just that performance. They own all the words you say. They own everything you wrote. And I'm like, no, you don't get to do that. So I would say no, and I would turn them down. And then often there would be certain kinds of censorship, whether it's words or subject matter. So, you know, if you're talking about whatever, if you're talking about, you know, different things about war or whatever, they might be like, well, one of our sponsors is such and such. So, yeah, so it's like, so I would go, nope, not doing it. So I should have had 5 or 7 out by now. But now with, you know, the internet and everything, it's a little more, you get a little more power as far as control. So, and this one I made all on my own. I made it 100% independently. And then after I finished it,
sold it to Netflix.
Yeah, licensed it to Netflix. Yeah,
that's really the best way to do it. No one can control any of the content that you're putting out there.
Not even me. Not even me.
Yeah, you're just
that's right.
Off the cuff.
It's just up to the people. Yeah.
It's got a rough look to it. What made you? I mean, the black and white look to it.
Well, it's a rough world, you know. No, this is filmed in black and white. It's filmed in a very. You know, when I was a kid, like the filmmakers I looked up to were, you know, a lot of the filmmakers from the New York independent film scene, you know, from the 70s and 80s, people like Jim Jarmusch, and it's like, you know, so I wanted a rawness to it, you know, and I think a rawness is missing. A raw look and a genuine authenticity is missing in so much of entertainment today. Everything's so overproduced. It's so, you know, big and fancy. And then if you look at our country, you know, we're very over the top. If you look at our president, very narcissistic, very over the top, very fancy, gold toilets, all this stuff. So I'm like, I'm going to go for the opposite of that. I'm going to keep it real simple and real raw and just let it, you know, just let the material and the performance speak for itself. So yeah, this is almost like an anti-special. I mean, this is basically a documentary. It's basically a stand-up performance film. It's 84 minutes. It's feature length. And it's not at a big, there's no fancy cranes like this one right here, you know, no offense, you know, but it's like, it's just, you know, I think stand-up comedy is a simple art form. It's just a person on stage. Your only technology is a microphone and you have a light. That's it. And then people are sitting there listening and watching. That's it. It's almost sometimes it's hard to believe it still exists, with today's modern technology, that something as simple as stand-up comedy exists. So I thought, it's a simple art form, let's film it in a simple way. And I also think as stand-up is like, it's a small art form. Yeah. It's not.
It's intimate.
It's not made for arenas and stadiums, and it's like jazz. You don't want to go see jazz at the Met Stadium or something. You want a small intimate experience. So that's how I filmed it. I filmed these mostly at the Comedy Cellar over multiple nights, and the Comedy Cellar has 3 rooms. One room seats about 125, one seats about 225, and one seats about 80, I guess. So those are the 3 rooms I filmed it in. Yeah.
Do you find, what do you think about when comedians make it to that point and they're performing at like arenas in Madison Square Garden? Do you think that it's okay because they generally change the tenor of their performance to match that and it's no longer that jazz that you love? Or do you think that real pure comedy is the kind that you're talking about?
Well, in general, I think smaller is better. Some of the large venues, I did an arena once in Canada, and yeah, it was very... it went well, but it's very weird. It's not the best experience for the comic or the audience, I don't think. And then I've done some theaters that are like, 3,500, and depending on how they're designed, some of them are actually quite good. It's still quite fine. But I think there's nothing like a small room, just very intimate, just, 100 people, something like that.
Just like a guy telling jokes to a small group of people.
Yeah, or a woman.
Or a woman, excuse me, yes,
or
man,
a woman.
or a woman,
Yeah.
or whoever.
Yeah, or a woman, yeah.
So this is crazy that this is your first special. That means that you have a solid 25, 30 years of material.
Yeah, I
really?
started in '89. When I first started, I didn't know how show business worked. So I did stand-up comedy once, and then I didn't do it again for 6 months because I thought that's how the business worked. I
didn't make it.
Yeah.
Better stop.
Yeah. No, I literally thought the comedians you saw on TV had, maybe done it like 10 times before or something. I had no clue how things worked. So then '91 is when I sort of figured out, oh, you're supposed to do this every night. So that's when I started doing shows every night.
What was the? And were you doing it in New York?
Yeah, I basically started. First place I ever went up was in D.C.
Right.
But I was living in New York. I basically started in New York. Yeah, I came to New York after high school. I came here in '87. Started writing jokes. I was very introverted, and so I started writing jokes in like '85, and then '89 I started doing stand-up. So when I was about 16, that's when I realized you could be a comedian. Before that, I didn't know you could do that.
And when you started performing every night in '91, what did the comedy scene feel like then, as opposed to?
Well, the whole city was so much different now. It was more dangerous. It was in some ways more authentic. It was less corporate. It was a lower income city. You could actually afford to live in Manhattan back then. You could afford to live in Brooklyn back then. So it was artistically, it felt more kind of free. You had to watch it more. Walking around outside, but you felt, but there was also less audiences. People didn't have money. The comedy clubs had hardly anybody at them. They were not crowded for the most part, especially during the week. On the weekends they were good, but on the weekends there was hardly anyone there. Now the city has so much money, not just from people who live here, but tourists coming in and stuff. Although I think tourism is a little down right now. But
I heard that we lost like $4.5 million or $1 billion just in 2017.
For the city or for the country?
For the country,
yeah.
because of tourism.
Yeah, I think
down.
it's down. But
people just don't get it, man. They just don't get it. It's the greatest country.
We're number one in every category. But it's
infant mortality rate.
So there's more audiences. There's more audiences. You kind of feel like you're the comic and you're performing for rich people all the time. That's kind of how it feels sometimes. But there's a lot of audiences. But not all audiences are like that, because as the comedy scene has expanded outside of the comedy clubs, there's lots of venues, whether it's little bars, cafes, or little theaters, where there's all kinds of comedy shows going on. A lot of them are free shows, and they're throughout the city, and throughout the boroughs. So the comedy scene's, it's a much bigger business than it used to be.
Was 91, like 89, 91, was that part of, there were generally like 3 different waves of comedy booms, right? Mm. Was that part of a wave of comedy boom, or was that in sort of one of the...
I think that was right after the boom.
Right.
I think the big comedy boom, as far as just everything being so busy and you can get so much work. That was more mid-'80s, like early to mid-'80s, I think. Is when the comedy clubs really started sprouting up all over the country.
How long? And so, were you essentially doing stand-up until you got cast on 30 Rock? Was that like 15 years of
Yeah, well, no,
stand-up,
actually,
basically?
before 30 Rock, I probably did about 25 movies or so before 30 Rock. My first TV breaks were in the like mid to late 90s. I think around 97. I got a commercial agent and I started getting acting jobs in commercials. And then I started getting quite busy with that. And then between that and then stand-up, I was able to quit my job. So I'm guessing after 6 or 7 years, I was able to.
What was your job?
I never had a career job. I just did anything that would make the rent. My last job I had was checking people in at the gym. That was the last job I had. I had all kinds of jobs. You know, I tried temp stuff, but I can't type fast. I have no computer skills, so I would just stuff envelopes. I remember I did that at the Freemason Society. It was so creepy. And then that was on 23rd and 6th.
Is the Freemason
I don't know.
Like
There's just
right-wing?
pictures of all these old presidents, and
Right.
nobody's allowed to say anything or ask any questions. I just sat there and stuffed envelopes. It was really creepy. Yeah.
Like to David Coe.
I think it is sort of a secret society
Yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah. But so that was weird. So yeah, all kinds of stuff. I remember I had this one job. My job was there was a poster for a new Broadway show, and it only lasted. I think it lasted less than a week. But my job was to go to every like deli or little takeout restaurant from Houston to 34th Street, from Broadway to First Avenue. Go to everyone and then see if they wanted to hang the poster up in their thing. So that was a weird one. Yeah.
I feel like that's a job that people still have too, because they see posters like
Probably.
odd posters up in delis.
Yeah.
It's like what?
I was an
where's
elf
the
at
demo for
Macy's
this?
one year. I was an elf at Macy's.
Were you
one year.
really?
That was weird. Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
the Santa like a nice guy?
Well, there were back then. There were a lot of Santas actually. Yeah.
Were the Santas generally pretty
I didn't.
nice guys?
No, they weren't.
Really?
Yeah. No, they were sort of off in their own section.
They were like
Yeah.
the star of the show. they had their own trailer. and stuff.
Probably it was kind of weird. And I remember there was this one incident. There was a racial incident. They had one
With
Santa.
Santa?
No, yeah, they had tons of Santas, and there were 6 Santas that were always working at once. And they had a black Santa that worked also, and they usually had him on standby in case a black family wanted to request a black Santa. But sometimes he would work anyways. And one time the black Santa was working, and a white family came in there, and the kid just started crying. And then the parents got mad, and they demanded a white Santa. It was, yeah. And then they basically they led the black Santa out, and then they bring back the white Santa. Like, all right, here's the real Santa Claus, kids. You know, it was really bad, really like just wrong on every level.
Did you just want to approach that white family and be like, guys?
I wasn't there when that happened.
Stop.
I had heard about that.
Oh.
Yeah, I wasn't there when that happened. But that happened when I was working there. Yeah, really weird, really bad.
Let's talk about the title of the
Yeah.
special and where this comes from. America, because this is actually probably a pretty good tie-in to that. America is the greatest country in the United States.
Well, it's one of the jokes from my act. In the stand-up special, I mean, we're talking seriously now, but the stand-up special, it's all comedy. It's all satire on the United States as far as our, the hypocrisy in the government and things that go on and the human rights violations and oppression in our country, as well as what we do outside the country. So, and then it satirizes just the sort of what we're all taught since we were kids. We're all taught in our schools. We're taught it. When you turn on the news, the newscasters all say it. The Democrat candidates say it. The Republican candidates say it. They all say America's the greatest country in the world. They'll say it's the greatest country in the history of the world. And then when someone's running for president, they'll say, we're electing the leader of the free world. And I always wondered, how come we're the only country that gets to vote for the leader of the free world? How come Egypt doesn't get to vote? How come Sweden doesn't get to vote? Argentina doesn't get to vote? It must be because we're number one. Only the best country gets to vote for the leader.
Russia
of the free world.
got to vote this time.
So, well, I guess that's a possibility. So, so we're always taught that we're the best at everything. And then when you learn that, and then when you believe that, and then there's actually problems going on, it gets people to sort of not look at, if you're taught we're number one, well, it can't be us. It must be somebody else. And then bad politicians will basically tell people, oh, it's those immigrants over there. That's what's messing things up. It's these people over here.
It makes it that much harder to solve problems because no one can actually face up to the problem.
Yeah.
All they're thinking is, well, we're number one.
Right. And then, you have people who will criticize you for criticizing the government or the country, but nobody does that. If you root for your hometown football team and they're 0-16, people are ripping on the coach, they're ripping on the players. It's like, you got to do that. That's how you get better, by analyzing things. So, and then a lot of the special it's criticizing the, like, again, in a funny way, in a satirical way, with tons of jokes, tons of crowd work. And it's, it's not just anti-Trump. Some of this was filmed before Trump was president, because I think one of the dangers, I don't like Trump at all. I think he's a very dangerous president. But it's, if you just think, oh, we get rid of Trump and everything will be fine again, I think that's a mistake. Trump did not invent mass incarceration. He didn't invent the Atlantic slave trade. He didn't invent no health care for people. He didn't invite endless wars. So I criticize, the whole system of everything. So, but again, it's a comedy. Yeah, it's a comedy.
I'd also say this phrase, America is the greatest country in the United States, and so much of what you're kind of talk about is very much a harbinger or a reminder of, reminds me of the Bush administration and that period of time just after 9/11 where you were really, as a citizen and as if someone worked in media, really only allowed to say, America is the greatest country in the United States.
Yeah,
for an
but it's been before that too. It's just, but yeah, no, they had the whole thing, you're with us or against us, so. So I think, I'm pro people, and I think we're at an interesting time now. I think that, the country's kind of at war with itself, and there's little wars going on everywhere. Within the right there's wars, within the left there's wars, within the middle there's wars, and, hopefully, change will get better and we'll have progress and not.
After having made this and put this out there, do you still feel like talking about politics when you get on stage, or was there a part of that was?
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Yeah, it depends on the night. Sometimes I'll go up and I'll just do all crowd work, messing with the crowd, having fun, and it's just going in any direction, And then sometimes I'm working on new material that's, again, dealing with all these big human rights issues, whether it's the Me Too movement, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's, healthcare, talking about the same issues, but doing new jokes on them, not repeating. This is 84 minutes of nonstop material. I'm not doing any of that material anymore. So, do you
find it difficult, or have you found it more difficult to find jokes about or within the Me Too movement as a male comedian?
It is difficult, and I only have really one bit on it, and it's I felt like it was. I think it's an important movement, and I just felt like, it's not my. It's not something I would never make fun of it, but it's not like something that I think it's important to just, everyone can be abused and violated, sexually. That can happen to any gender, and but it's been mostly women have gotten it more than other people. Transgender people have gotten it more than other people. So I'm like, I don't want to interject my stuff. I'll listen, So yeah.
What we need is is your opinion, right? Like that's
you don't want to just mansplain the whole country. Yeah. So. Yeah.
As soon as you kind of offer an opinion and someone is like, well, no one really wants to hear, you're like, oh yeah, you're right. I don't need to interject in this.
Yeah, I think it's important to hear all opinions, but I think there's time where you should listen and let some people speak more than others. You just got to feel it out, feel what's right.
When going back to the comment I made about the Bush administration, after Trump won the election, I went back and I watched the first 2 seasons of 30 Rock because those seasons take place during the final years, really, of the Bush administration.
Okay.
And it was remarkably cathartic because it was such a sharp show specifically when it made fun of the Bush administration and it didn't hide any of its politics. Really, it felt at the time. Did it feel that way when you were on the show as well? I mean, how involved? I don't think you weren't that involved.
I didn't do
with
any
writing
writing on the show. I mean, there were some moments where I would give them a joke. You know, I came with a joke, I'd give them a joke. Certainly all the hats I wore, I came up with all those. And I mean, I made all those and I wrote all those. They kind of gave me free rein on that. And then...
Is that in the contract?
No. It was just something, you know, because before that I was doing like 2 to 5 movies a year and doing stand-up all the time. And for the movies, I would often completely change my look, you know, like did American Splendor or even The Wrestler, you know, where I just look completely differently and I act differently. And for doing a movie, that can be a lot of fun, you know, but it's usually anywhere from a couple days to a couple months. But 30 Rock, you know, before I film one episode, you know, I had to sign a 6-year contract, and the work is 8 to 9 months a year. And I'm still doing stand-up all the time, so I said to them, you know, if I'm going to do this, I need to look like I normally do. And then I brought up the hat thing, and I said, man, maybe we can work this in a different angle, where the Frank character, to sort of sometimes just as a conversation starter, might wear a crazy hat, or maybe in a passive-aggressive way, he might wear hats. Where Liz Lemon, let's say Frank submits a script to Liz Lemon, and she thinks it sucks, so she never does it, then maybe Frank would wear the title of that, you know, like Karate Prom or Space Dog or something like that. You know, so these would be, you know, the names of the sketches that he would write. And then, so then if I wear that and then wear it around the office and she sees other people laugh at it, then I can be like, see, you should have produced my sketch. It was good, but you didn't like it, you know.
So that
was sort of just a backstory that I had in my head, you know. So, you know, and you know, Tina was cool with that. So, you know.
Yeah. Let's get some questions from our audience.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for coming out.
Hi.
This used to be Tower Records, by the way. It's weird. I used to get you know, some records and CDs here back in the day, as well as cassettes. I bought a
Do you still buy records?
I haven't in a while.
Vinyl guy?
All my stuff's been in storage I've been moving. All my stuff's been in storage for so long. So, but yeah, that would be cool. I do like them. I like holding on to something and something that's big.
Same.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. Hey, what's up, man?
Hey. Yeah. So I've been trying to figure out your hat. Does it have a message on it?
It says world champion. It's in Morse code.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just very serious times. It's in Morse code. Yeah.
Oh, that was a question?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
No.
All right.
Next question. That was very efficient.
No, that was great.
Solid question, straight up answer. You know.
Hey, Judah.
Hello.
I was wondering, like, with the comedy that you put into the Netflix special, like, do you decide like which bits that you want to put in, or whatever you want to?
Yeah, I made this. I filmed it all. You know, I 100% independently produced it. So I edited it. I filmed it. Yeah, and this is all thematic. You know, everything falls under the umbrella of you know, America being number one. You know, and all the different, you know, problems we have in the country, from race issues to sexism issues, to whether it's gun control, healthcare, climate change, talk about all those issues. So there's lots of like when I was first editing it, I have a lot of jokes that are just funny one-liners, not political, not dealing with human rights, just pure escapism, just pure comedy. And then I wound up cutting those out because it didn't sort of fit thematically to the whole thing. So, yeah.
I think we have time for one more
Okay.
question.
Yeah, hey, how you doing?
What's up, man? So, as well known as you are, how do you stay so humble and grounded? Because once I went on Craigslist, I was looking for a furniture piece, and guess what?
Yeah, hey, what's up, man?
You remember?
Yeah, yeah. I think I was moving in Queens.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had some stuff I had to get rid of. I think that was free. I was just, yeah. So it was just like, you know, I'm just a guy trying to get through the world, you know? And I look at the movie Rocky 3 as an example. Because if you look at Rocky 1 and Rocky 2, right, he's all, you know, he's not doing well, you know, he's living in a rough neighborhood, you know, he doesn't have a fancy house or anything. And then Rocky 3, he gets all famous and rich, and that's when he starts losing. He gets too soft. So I'm of the, I use that Rocky 3 as a lesson to not get too You can't get too. And as a comedian, if you get out of touch with people, it's like, what the hell are you going to talk about? You're going to have no perspective. You're going to lose it, and then you'll get dated. You'll be behind the times. So it's like, you always got to just keep it real and get in the mix. If you're just taking cars or limos everywhere, you're not going to know what people deal with. So but I remember. Then you filmed me one night too. This was like 3-4 years ago. Yeah, that's so cool. Good to see you, man.
I still have it at my house.
Oh, you do? Okay, great, awesome.
He signed it.
Yeah, that was in. I was living out in Middle Village, way out in Queens, and then I was trying to, it's like, all right, I'm putting stuff in storage and moving. It's like, if I keep this big piece of furniture, that's going to take up this much space in the storage space, and that cost me this much money. I should just get rid of this stuff, So yeah.
That's a daily event in my house. Like, should we get rid of this? Or,
I know. I'm a natural pack rat too. I'm a natural hoarder. I always fight against it.
Was it harder for you to maintain that kind of, I don't want to say staying grounded because it's not being grounded, but joking about things that everyday people or everybody
Well, it's also good to only be
show.
so successful. I'm really not that financially or fame successful. So that might help too. Yeah.
I feel like we've seen that.
I don't make all that much money, so I think that might help also. Hold on, the cops are coming for me. I gotta.
We've seen that a few times with some comics recently, no names to mention, but the fairly mediocre, very quick rise very quickly, and all of a sudden the jokes are about famous people that they just met or what it's like to be famous.
I was never into that,
Did you ever?
Well, there's a lot of comics too who, once they get to a very, very big level, they start getting writers and stuff too. A lot of people don't know that, but that's to me that's comedy's something it's got to be a one-person creative process, I think.
Did you ever want to get writers or anything like that too?
No,
or you're like,
no, I would never do that. Would never do that. Yeah. I mean, you might bounce some jokes off some comic friends or something like that, but I don't even. When I first started, I would do some of that, but I don't even do that anymore. I just do it on stage, or do it with the audience. The audience is sort of like the audience sort of guides you in a way. They don't dictate it really, but they offer a guide as to how you're doing with stuff, That's one thing that's cool about stand-up as opposed to filmmaking. Filmmaking, because I used to make a lot of films, when I was a kid and even into my early 20s. And then I, dabbled in it over the years. And this is basically a film. But film's tough because if you have a funny idea for a movie, you think of it, and then you write the script, and then now it's months later, and now you cast it, now you find your locations, then you film it, then you edit it. So from the time you thought of a funny idea, it's 6 months later to when you screen it, and that's when you actually find out if it's funny or any good. In stand-up, it's right away. It's 1 second, the longest, to find out if something's funny.
That's why I think a lot of the sort of big comedy directors like Judd Apatow or Paul Feig have multiple comedians on set throwing out as many ideas as possible so that they have.
Yeah, I think on some of those shows, they I mean, everyone works differently, but I think there's multiple writers on a TV show or a movie, and they might have what they call the alt lines, the alternative lines, where they have the written lines, and then they'll have different alternative lines that they'll throw out and have the actors try. Yeah, some directors work that way.
Well, it's the way that you get to work as a comedian where it's like, oh, the audience is feeling like this right now. I can adjust this joke or what I'm doing right now to match this audience's tone. It's like the only way a filmmaker can maybe kind of
with stand-up, it's very interesting because you need to listen to the audience, but at the same time, you don't want to pander to the audience. You don't want the audience to dictate things. It's almost, it's somewhere in between a monologue and a dialogue, I think. It's, because if you're pandering, then that's not good, Do
you find that you get confrontational when the audience isn't on your side, or do you find that you try to maybe pander a little bit more?
Neither, I think. It's, everyone's different, and you just gotta, It's interesting with stand-up. I remember I was thinking, what would be, if something were to happen to you, would you choose to be blind or would you choose to be deaf? And as a stand-up, I think you would have to choose to be blind. I don't think most people would take that. But stand-up is really, it's more, you know, so much of it is relying on your hearing, you know, more than anything else, and your voice. So, yeah. I don't even know if I answered your question. I don't even remember what it is anymore. But,
Judah, thanks so much for being here. And the special is now on Netflix. America's
on
the greatest
Netflix.
country in the United States.
Yep.
You can see Judah, like I said at the beginning of this, almost every night, really, in New York City.
I'm also, I'm never on screen, but I'm actually the dad of that kid on Stranger Things. So.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that kid. Yeah. They've never shown me yet, but yeah. I think season 15 they're going to finally reveal me as his father.
Judah Friedlander, everybody. Let's hear it.
Thanks so much.